Welcome to Friday Night Frights. We hope you enjoy your stay.
Tonight's first story is The Nothing Men. The grief support group met in the basement of a Unitarian church in Asheville, North Carolina, every Thursday at 7. Sarah Vance had been going for 6 weeks, which meant she'd heard the same people tell the same stories approximately 6 times each. There was a rhythm to it that she found almost comforting, the way you could set your watch by other people's pain. Tom had lost his wife to cancer. Linda had lost her son to a hiking accident in the mountains. Marcus had lost his daughter to suicide. And Sarah? Well, Sarah had lost her daughter in something the doctors called SUDC, sudden unexplained death in childhood, which was just a fancy way of saying they had no idea why a healthy 3-year-old stopped breathing in her sleep. The group leader was a woman named Janet, who had the kind of aggressively sympathetic voice that made Sarah want to throw things. Janet liked to talk about the grief journey and honoring your feelings and other phrases that sounded like they had been pulled from a Pinterest board about healing. Sarah kept coming back anyway, mostly because her therapist had suggested it, and her husband had seized onto the suggestion like a life raft, desperate for anything that might make his wife cry less in the Whole Foods produce section. It was during the 7th week that the Nothing Men started appearing. Sarah noticed the first one during Tom's turn. He was in the middle of his usual monologue. I keep setting out 2 coffee cups in the morning. It's been 8 months and I still can't remember she's not there. When Sarah saw something move in her peripheral vision. The basement had that half-finished quality that church basements always have, with exposed pipes running along the ceiling and a water-stained drop tile here and there. There was a corner behind Marcus that was particularly dark, where the fluorescent lights didn't quite reach. Something was standing there. Not something. Someone. A figure, roughly person-shaped, but made of shadow. Not casting a shadow. Made of it. The darkness had texture, depth, the way smoke has when it curls in on itself. Sarah blinked. The figure was still there. She looked around the circle to see if anyone else had noticed. Everyone was focused on Tom, who'd moved on to talking about the casseroles people had brought that he'd eventually thrown away, months later, discovered, freezer burned and forgotten. When Sarah looked back at the corner, the shadow figure had moved closer. It was standing directly behind Marcus now, maybe 3 feet away. It had no face that Sarah could discern, no features at all, but she had the distinct impression it was watching Marcus specifically. Marcus was crying quietly, the way he always did during Tom's turn. Marcus and his partner had been together for 17 years. The suicide had come out of nowhere, he said. No note, no warning. Just a closed garage and a running car and a question mark that would follow Marcus for the rest of his life. The shadow figure reached out. That was the only way Sarah could describe it, though it had no distinct hand, and touched the back of Marcus's neck. Marcus stopped crying. He blinked, like someone coming out of a trance, and wiped his face. "Sorry," he said. I'm fine. I'm good. Tom, keep going." But Tom had already finished. The room had that hollow silence that always followed someone's story. The collective exhale of people relieved it wasn't their turn. Sarah kept staring at the corner. The shadow figure was darker now, more solid, as if it had absorbed something from Marcus and become more real in the process. "Did anyone else see that?" Sarah asked her husband that night. David looked up from his laptop. He'd been working from home more since Emma died, which mostly meant he sat in the living room with his computer and tried to look productive while clearly doing nothing. "See what?" "In that support group, there was something in the corner, a shadow." "A shadow?" "Not a normal shadow. She struggled for words. "A person-shaped shadow, standing up on its own." David's face did that thing it had been doing a lot lately, a careful neutrality that Sarah had come to recognize as pity. "Are you sleeping?" "I'm fine, because Dr. Chen said that the Ambien might cause..." "I wasn't hallucinating, David. I saw something." He closed his laptop with the kind of gentle precision that people use when they're trying very hard not to start a fight. "Okay, you saw something. What do you want to do about it?" The question hung there between them, along with all the other things they didn't say anymore. Like how David had gone back to work after 2 weeks because he needed to maintain normalcy, while Sarah had quit her job because she couldn't stop seeing Emma in every child she passed. Like how David had boxed up Emma's room after 3 months, with Sarah still sometimes slept in there, on the floor, breathing in the fading scent of her daughter's laundry. Like how David seemed to be getting better, moving on, healing. All those things Janet liked to talk about, while Sarah was stuck in a perpetual loop of the morning she'd found Emma cold in her crib. "Nothing," Sarah said. "I'm not going to do anything about it." But she kept going to the group. The next week, there were 3 of them. One behind Marcus again, one behind Linda, and one, Sarah's breath caught, standing directly behind her own chair. She could feel it, not a temperature drop or a chill, nothing that obvious, just a presence, a weight, like someone standing too close in an elevator. She wanted to turn around, but something stopped her. Some animal instinct that said, "Don't look directly at it. Don't acknowledge it." Janet was talking about grief triggers. "Sometimes it's a smell or a song or just a random Tuesday that feels impossible. Those are normal." Linda interrupted. "I don't think I'm sad anymore." Everyone looked at her. Linda, who'd spent the last 4 months describing in excruciating detail the moment the ranger had knocked on her door, the hike into the gorge to identify her son's body, the funeral where she'd screamed at God in front of everyone. "I mean, I remember being sad," Linda continued. She looked confused, like she was solving a math problem in her head. "I remember that I should be sad. My son died. That's sad, but I don't feel it anymore." "That's wonderful," Janet said in her Pinterest voice. "That's acceptance. That's..." "No," Linda shook her head. It's not acceptance. It's nothing. I feel nothing. Sarah watched the shadow figure behind Linda. It was darker than the others, more defined. She could almost make out features now. The suggestion of shoulders, a head. It looked bloated and gorged. Marcus spoke up. I know what you mean. I've been feeling better too. Lighter. I can think about Ryan now without feeling anything in particular. Tom nodded slowly. The coffee cups don't bother me anymore. Everyone in the circle was nodding except Sarah. Janet looked delighted, like this was a breakthrough, like her months of facilitating had finally paid off. But Sarah was watching the shadows grow darker, more solid, more real. And she was feeling the presence behind her own chair lean in closer. She started researching that night. Appalachian folklore, shadow people, grief manifestations. The internet was full of the usual nonsense, creepypasta and paranormal blogs and Reddit threads that went nowhere. But buried in a digital archive of WPA interviews from the 1930s, Sarah found something. An interview with a woman in eastern Kentucky, recorded in 1937. My grandmother used to talk about the hollow men. That's what she called them. Said they came for people who were grieving too hard, grieving in a way that wasn't natural. They stand in the corners of rooms and wait, patient as anything. And when the grief got too heavy, too big for a person to carry, the hollow men would take it. Take all of it. The sadness, the anger, the love. Because you can't separate them, you see. It's all bound up together. They take the whole tangle, and you'd be left hollow, too. Empty. My grandmother said she'd seen it happen to her own mother after her father died. Said her mother lived another 40 years, but never felt the thing again. Just walked through life like a ghost herself. Sarah read it 3 times. Then she read the comments, sparse because this was an academic archive that approximately 12 people had ever accessed. One comment from a new username that was just a string of numbers had been posted 6 years ago. They're not hollow men. They're made of what they take. The grief gives them form. The more they absorb, the more real they become. Eventually, they're real enough to touch other people, real enough to spread. My wife went to a grief group in Boone. She came home different, empty. 2 months later, she walked into the woods and I never saw her again. The police said she got lost, but I know better. She went looking for the feeling they took from her, went looking for something to fill the hollow. Check the missing persons in Appalachia. See how many were recent widows or bereaved parents. See how many went to support groups first. Sarah checked. The numbers were higher than they should be. The next Thursday, Sarah came to group early. She wanted to see if the shadow figures were already there or if they appeared when the grieving people arrived. The basement was empty. Just folding chairs arranged in their circle, bad fluorescent lights, exposed pipes. No shadows. She was the first to arrive. She took her usual seat and waited. Tom came next, looking better than he had in weeks. Almost cheerful. He nodded at Sarah, poured himself some of the terrible coffee Janet always brought, and sat down. A shadow peeled itself from the corner and moved toward him. Sarah watched it coalesce, thicken. It was feeding on proximity alone now. Just being near Tom was enough. Didn't even need to touch him anymore. The others arrived one by one. Marcus, Linda, 3 others whose names Sarah could never remember. Each brought their own shadow, or maybe the shadows brought them. It was getting hard to tell. Janet arrived last, arms full of her usual materials, tissues, pamphlets about grief counseling, a notebook where she wrote down everyone's breakthroughs. She didn't have a shadow following her because she wasn't grieving. She was just performing grief, wearing it like a professional costume. The shadows didn't want her. "I'd like to talk about moving forward," Janet said once everyone was settled. "I've noticed that many of you are entering a new phase. The acute pain is lessening. You're finding joy again. This is healthy. This is growth." Sarah spoke before she could stop herself. "What if it's not growth? What if it's theft?" The room went quiet. Janet's smile tightened. "Sarah, grief isn't something that can be stolen. It's a process. Can anyone here remember the last time they cried about their person?" Sarah looked around the circle. "Really cried. Really felt it." Tom frowned. I guess it's been a while." "Weeks," Marcus said. "Maybe a month." "I can't remember the last time I thought about Ryan and felt anything," Linda said. "I can remember that I loved him. I can remember that he's dead. But I can't," she touched her chest, "I can't feel it anymore." "That's not a bad thing," Janet insisted. "That's healing." "Is it?" Sarah stood up. The shadow behind her chair shifted, and she felt it for the first time. The pull, like a vacuum drawing something out of her. Or is it something else? "Look behind you, all of you. Look at what's standing there." "Sarah, sit down. You're having an episode. Look." Maybe it was the force of her voice. Maybe it was because they were on the edge already, all sensing something wrong. But they looked. And they saw. Tom gasped. Marcus made a sound like he'd been punched. Linda just stared, her mouth open. The shadows were everywhere now, pressing against the walls of the basement, crowding the corners. At least a dozen of them, all bloated and dark and almost human. The ones behind the group members were the darkest, the most defined. Sarah could see faces now, or the impression of faces, features made from stolen sorrow, eyes that were cavities of absorbed love. "What are they?" Tom whispered. Sarah had spent all week thinking about how to explain this. "They're us, the parts of us we're losing, the grief, the love. It's all the same thing. You can't let go of the pain without letting go of what caused it. They've been taking it, and we've been letting them." "But I feel better," Marcus said. He sounded desperate. "I can function now. I can go to work without breaking down. I can see his things without remembering why you loved him," Sarah finished. "That's the price." The shadow behind Marcus seemed to pulse, and suddenly Sarah understood. They weren't just feeding passively. They were showing the group members what they could offer. Relief, peace, the ability to move forward without the weight. And it was tempting. God, it was tempting. Sarah could feel her own shadow pulling at her, drawing out the morning she found Emma. The terrible weight of it, the way it colored every moment of every day. The shadow could take it, take all of it. She could wake up tomorrow and remember that she'd had a daughter, remember that her daughter had died, but not feel the way her world had ended in that moment. She could be like David, functional, moving on, empty. "We have to stop coming here," Sarah said. "You have to stop feeding them." "Or," Linda said quietly, "we could let them finish." Sarah turned to her. Linda was looking at the shadow behind her own chair with something like longing. "I'm so tired," Linda said. "I'm tired of hurting. I'm tired of waking up and remembering and feeling it all over again. If they can take it, all of it, why shouldn't I let them?" "Because you'll forget him," Sarah said. "Not the facts of him, but the feeling of him, the love." "Maybe that's okay," Linda's voice cracked. "Maybe I don't want to spend the rest of my life carrying something this heavy. Maybe I want to be normal again." Tom was nodding. So was Marcus. So were the others. They all wanted it, the relief, the nothing. Janet had backed up against the wall, staring at the shadows with wide eyes. This isn't part of the process. This isn't..." One of the shadows moved toward her. She screamed and ran for the stairs. The shadow didn't follow. It drifted back to its corner, patient, waiting. Because Janet wasn't what they wanted. She had nothing to give them. Sarah looked around the circle of people who'd become familiar to her over the past weeks. People who'd shared their worst moments. People who were choosing right now to let those moments be taken away. "If you do this," she said, "you'll never get it back. The grief, yes, but also everything else. You won't remember how Tom's wife made him laugh. You won't remember why Marcus's partner mattered. You won't remember..." Her voice broke. She wouldn't remember Emma's weight in her arms, the way she smelled, the sound of her laugh. Not just the idea of these things, but the feeling. The lived reality of having loved her daughter with every cell in her body. The shadow behind Sarah pressed closer. She could feel it offering, not in words, but in sensation. A life without the crushing weight. A life where she could see baby clothes in a store and feel nothing. Where she could hear a child laugh and not have to leave the room. Where she could stay married to David instead of watching their relationship dissolve under the pressure of her inability to move forward. A normal life. An empty life. "I can't," Sarah whispered. She didn't know if she was talking to the shadow or to herself. Tom stood up. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but I'm done. I'm just done." He turned and faced the shadow behind him directly. It reached out. She could see it now, distinct arms, distinct hands, and touched his face. Tom exhaled. His shoulders dropped. The permanent tension Sarah had seen in him for weeks just disappeared. "Oh," he said softly. "Oh, that's better." The shadow was darker now, nearly solid and nearly real. One by one, the others stood. Marcus, Linda, the ones whose names Sarah had never learned. They turned to face their shadows. They let themselves be touched. And one by one, they became lighter, emptier, better. The shadows became more. Sarah ran. She bolted up the stairs, through the church, out into the parking lot. The October air was cold and sharp and real. She got in her car with shaking hands and locked the doors. Like that would help, like shadows needed doors to get through. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from David. How was group? She stared at it. How was group? How was the grief support group where everyone else had chosen to become hollow rather than keep hurting? How was the choice between remembering love and functioning in the world? She drove home on autopilot. David was in the living room, laptop open, pretending to work. He looked up when she came in. You okay? You look... I saw something, Sarah said. Again. This time, everyone saw it. She told him everything. The shadows, the folklore, the choice the others had made. She talked fast, expecting him to do the concerned face thing again, to suggest she called Dr. Chen, to gently imply she was having a breakdown. But David just listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Where do I sign up? Sarah's stomach dropped. What? For the group, the support group. Where is it? David, you weren't listening. They take everything, not just the grief. I know. He closed his laptop. Sarah, I can't do this anymore. I can't wake up every day and see you destroying yourself. I can't watch you sleep on the floor of Emma's room. I can't keep pretending that you're going to be okay. If there's a way to make this stop hurting, I want it. We both need it. I need to remember her. You can remember her, just without all of this. He gestured at her, and she saw herself through his eyes. Unwashed hair, the same shirt she'd worn for 3 days, the exhaustion that had become her personal state, her permanent state. If I let them take it, Sarah said slowly, I won't remember what it felt like to hold her. I'll know I had a daughter named Emma. I'll know she died, but I won't feel it. And if I don't feel it, David, then what's the point? What's the point of having loved her at all? David's face did something complicated. Maybe the point is that we get to keep living. Maybe that's enough. Picked up his laptop and went upstairs. Sarah stood in the empty living room and understood that she was going to lose him too. Not to death, but to nothing. To the hollow. He'd go to the group, he'd make the choice, and he'd come back empty. He'd be better. Functional. Moved on. And she'd be alone with the full weight of loving and losing their daughter. The weight no one else could carry anymore because everyone else had chosen not to. She went back to the church the next Thursday. The others were already there, sitting in their circle. Tom, Marcus, Linda, David. David looked better than he had in months. He smiled when he saw her. A real smile, uncomplicated by grief. You came, he said. I came. The shadows were there too, darker than ever, nearly opaque. They'd grown fat on what they'd taken. They were almost people now, almost real enough to touch, not just the grieving. Sarah could see what they'd become. Entities made entirely of stolen love, stolen sorrow, stolen memory. And they were hungry for more. They'd spread beyond this basement soon. They'd touch people who'd never lost anyone, people who'd never grieved. They'd start taking joy, taking connection, taking every feeling that made people human, until everyone was hollow. She took her seat. Her shadow was still there, patient, waiting. It had been waiting for her all week. Janet was gone. The group was running itself now, people sharing stories about how much better they felt, how functional they'd become. David talked about going back to the gym. Marcus talked about dating again. Linda talked about nothing, and the way people do when they have nothing left to say. They all looked at Sarah expectantly. "I've been thinking," she said, "about the choice, about whether it's worth it carrying this weight." The shadow behind her leaned in. "And I realized something." Sarah kept her voice steady. "The weight is all I have left of her. If I let it go, Emma becomes just a fact, just a name, just something that happened once. But if I keep it, the grief, the love, all of it together, she stays real. She stays mine." "That's not healthy," David said in a voice that wasn't quite his anymore. "That's not moving forward." "No," Sarah agreed. "It's not." She stood up and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Tom asked. "Somewhere I can still feel things," Sarah said. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she'd see what David had become, what they'd all become. And she'd see her own shadow, reaching out, offering the nothing she'd refused. She climbed the stairs and walked through the church, out into the parking lot. The October air was cold and sharp and real. She got in her car and drove. She didn't know where she was going, just that it had to be far from the nothing men, far from the hollow, far from everyone who'd chosen to stop feeling rather than feel too much. In her rearview mirror, she saw David standing in the church parking lot, watching her go. He didn't look sad. He didn't look anything at all. Sarah drove until the church was out of sight, and then she pulled over and cried. Really cried. The way she hadn't let herself cry in weeks. She cried for Emma. She cried for David. She cried for everyone in that basement who traded love for peace. And when she was done, when she'd emptied herself out with sobbing, she felt it. The weight, still there. The grief, still hers. The love, still real. She was the last one left who remembered what it felt like to love someone enough that losing them destroyed you. The last one who'd chosen the pain over the nothing. The last one who was still, in the way that mattered, alive.
Spend a night alone in a haunted asylum or an abandoned church. See ghosts everywhere or hear whispers no one else can hear. Be hunted by a demon for a week or possessed for 1 hour each night. Be chased by a shapeshifter or stalked by an invisible entity. Host a seance that works or one that goes horribly wrong. Be cursed by a witch or marked by an ancient sigil. Hear your name whispered at 3 o'clock in the morning every night, or see a figure at the foot of your bed. Explore an abandoned carnival or a deserted underground tunnel. Become immortal but hunted, or mortal but protected by spirits? Hear scratching inside your closet, or hear footsteps upstairs when you are alone. Read from a forbidden grimoire, or open a sealed crypt. Discover your reflection moves independently, or your shadow does.
Now, back to the scares.
The Tomb That Holds Nothing Back. A fictionalized account based on alleged true stories of hauntings in Greyfriars Kirkyard and the Mackenzie poltergeist. George Mackenzie died on May 8, 1691. They called him Bloody Mackenzie, the hanging judge, the man who'd sent thousands of Covenanters to torture and death, who'd imprisoned them in a walled section of Greyfriars Kirkyard. No shelter, no sanitation, exposed to Edinburgh's bitter winters. Men, women, children, crushed together in a space too small, starving, freezing, dying by the dozens. Mackenzie had overseen it all, the trials, the executions, the imprisonment. He'd done it with cold efficiency, with absolute conviction that he was serving God and King. When he died, they buried him in a mausoleum at Greyfriars, black stone, imposing, a monument of power and righteousness. They sealed him inside, locked the iron gate, thought he was contained. They were wrong, because the dead don't forget, and the thousands who died because of George Mackenzie, they were all around his tomb, buried in unmarked graves, scattered in the soil, absorbed into the earth of Greyfriars Kirkyard. The Covenanters' prison was just yards from Mackenzie's mausoleum, the place where hundreds had suffered and died. The ground there was black, not from soil, from blood, from bodies left too long, from suffering soaked so deep it stained the earth itself. Mackenzie's tomb sat next to that tainted ground like a stone beside a wound. For 300 years, they existed in proximity, the oppressor and the oppressed, separated by stone and iron, by death and time, until the seal was broken. 1679, the prison. The Covenanters' prison wasn't meant to be permanent. After the Battle of Bothwell Bridge, the government needed somewhere to hold the captured rebels. 1,200 Presbyterian Covenanters who dared to resist King Charles II's religious policies, who'd fought for the right to worship as they chose. Greyfriars Kirkyard had a walled section, secure, convenient. They herded the prisoners inside like cattle, locked the gates. It was supposed to be temporary. Days, weeks at most. It became months. The prisoners had no shelter, no roofs, no tents, just the walls and the sky and the graves beneath their feet. When it rained, they stood in mud, When it snowed, they huddled together for warmth. When the sun came out, they thanked God for small mercies. The rations were inadequate. Stale bread, water, sometimes rotten meat. Not enough. Never enough. People started dying. At first, the guards removed the bodies, buried them outside the prison, marked the graves. But as more died, they stopped bothering. They just threw the corpses in the corner and let them pile up. Let the living share space with the rotting dead. Disease spread. Fever, dysentery, infection. More died. The smell was unbearable. Death and waste and unwashed bodies. The entire neighborhood could smell the prison, could hear the moaning, the prayers, the cries for mercy. George Mackenzie visited sometimes, watched from outside the walls, observed the conditions with cool detachment. They brought this upon themselves, he'd say. Rebellion has consequences. He ordered interrogations, trials, executions. One by one, he processed them. Some he released. Some he transported to colonies. Some he hanged. Many never made it to trial. Died in the prison first, in the cold, in the filth, in the despair. By the time they emptied the prison 4 months later, hundreds were dead, maybe more. The records were incomplete, deliberately incomplete. They buried the bodies quickly, quietly. Didn't mark most of the graves, just dug pits and filled them, covered the evidence. But the ground remembered. The soil absorbed their suffering, their rage, their betrayal. The earth of Greyfriars Kirkyard turned dark, poisoned by death and injustice, and it waited. 1691, the burial. When George Mackenzie died, Edinburgh's elite mourned. He'd been Lord Advocate, Dean of the Faculty of Advocates, a legal mind, a defender of order. They built him a mausoleum in Greyfriars, grand, expensive, black stone and iron gates. Inside a marble monument, his effigy in robes, his accomplishments carved in stone. No mention of the Covenanters, no acknowledgement of the prison, of the deaths, of the suffering. Just praise for his service to king country. They sealed him inside, locked the gates, left him to eternal rest. But rest requires peace, requires absolution, requires the forgiveness of those you've wronged. Mackenzie had none of that. The day they sealed his tomb, the first incident occurred. A gravedigger working nearby heard screaming, coming from inside the mausoleum. Fresh healed. No one inside but Mackenzie's corpse. But the screaming was real, multiple voices, overlapping, anguish. The gravedigger ran, refused to work that section of the kirkyard again. Other workers heard it too. At night, at dawn, voices from Mackenzie's tomb. Not Mackenzie's voice, other voices, many voices. The Covenanters had found him. 1700s to 1800s, the quiet years. For 2 centuries, the haunting was subtle. People avoided Mackenzie's mausoleum, It felt wrong, cold, oppressive. Even on warm days, standing near it made you shiver. The area around the Covenanters' prison was worse. The ground there never quite dried out. It was always slightly damp, muddy, as if something underneath was perpetually weeping. Nothing grew properly in that section. Grass was sparse, sickly, trees grew twisted. Wrong. Maintenance workers hated being assigned to that area. Tools would go missing, would reappear in strange places, in the prison, on top of Mackenzie's tomb, arranged deliberately. Messages. Sometimes they'd find objects inside the prison, personal items that hadn't been there the day before. Buttons, scraps of cloth, bones, small bones, from hands, feet, fragments. The Covenanters rising to the surface, pushing through the earth, refusing to stay buried. Night watchmen reported sounds, moaning, chains rattling, footsteps in empty sections. Always near the prison, always near Mackenzie's tomb. But these were minor phenomena, unsettling but containable. The Kirkyard had other ghosts, other hauntings. Greyfriars was old, death was everywhere. No one realized it was building, accumulating, waiting for the seal to be broken. 1990s, the breaking. The homeless man's name had been lost to history, just another forgotten soul, one of Edinburgh's invisible people. He broke into Mackenzie's mausoleum looking for shelter. It was winter, cold. The stone tomb offered protection from wind and rain. The iron gate had rusted. It was old, and he forced it. The lock broke. The gate swung open. 300 years. The tomb had been sealed for 300 years. He stepped inside. The air was wrong immediately. Thick, heavy. It pressed against his lungs, made breathing difficult. The temperature dropped, not gradually, instantly. His breath fogged. Frost formed on the black stone walls. He heard whispers, many voices, speaking Scottish, old Scottish, words he didn't understand but whose meaning he felt in his bones. Betrayer, murderer, blood judge, condemned. The whispers grew louder, became shouting, became screaming. The homeless man ran, fled the tomb, out of the kirkyard, into the night. But he'd done it. He'd opened the seal, broken the lock, let it out. The gate to Mackenzie's mausoleum swung open, stayed open. And what had been building for 3 centuries? What had been accumulating in the dark ground around the prison? It poured out. The poltergeist. It started the next day. A woman walking through the kirkyard near the Covenanters' prison felt something push her, hard, from behind. She stumbled. She fell. Looked back. No one was there, but her back burned. She lifted her shirt later, found scratches. 3 parallel lines, deep, fresh, bleeding, as if clawed by something with 3 fingers. A man visiting Mackenzie's tomb felt hands on his throat, squeezing, choking, clawed at nothing, fought invisible hands. His friends pulled him away, saw the marks forming on his neck, red, bruising, finger-shaped. But no fingers, no hands, no attacker. A tour group near the prison heard screaming. All of them. 20 people heard it simultaneously, coming from inside the walled section. Desperate anguish, the screams of people dying. But the prison was empty, had been empty for 300 years. The screams continued for 10 minutes, then stopped abruptly, cut off mid-cry. The activity intensified daily, hourly, constantly. People were pushed, scratched, burned, bruised, bitten, attacked by nothing, by air, by malevolence made manifest. The attacks focused on two areas, the Covenanters' prison and Mackenzie's tomb, as if something was moving between them, back and forth, unable to decide which it hated more, the place where they'd suffered or the man who caused it. The Black Mausoleum. Mackenzie's tomb became known as the Black Mausoleum, not for its color, for what it contained. Not Mackenzie's corpse, that was long since dust. It contained rage, concentrated, purified, 3 centuries of accumulated hatred. The Covenanters had found their oppressor, even in death, even beyond death, and they were enacting revenge. People who entered the mausoleum, even briefly, even just to look, came out changed, marked. They'd collapse outside, unconscious. When they woke, they'd have injuries, burns in strange patterns, scratching spelling words in Old Scottish, bruises in the shape of manacles, chains. The Covenanters showing what was done to them, sharing their suffering, making the living understand. Some people never woke up, collapsed near the tomb, had to be hospitalized in a coma or unexplained, and doctors found nothing wrong. But the victims wouldn't wake. Trapped somewhere, some state between experiencing something medical science couldn't measure. Experiencing what the Covenanters experience. The imprisonment, the slow death, the abandonment. Over and over, forever. The prison itself. The Covenanters' prison became the most dangerous area. The ground there would open, not cracks, not natural subsidence. The earth would part, deliberately, revealing bones beneath. Skeletal hands reaching up, grasping, trying to pull the living down, to share the grave, to not be alone anymore. People who stood too long in the prison would sink, the ground softening beneath them. Mud that wasn't mud, something thicker, darker, hungrier. They'd pull their feet out covered in black substance. It would burn, leave marks and scars. The soil of Greyfriars claiming them, marking them, and reminding them, you walk on the dead, and the dead remember. Cold spots formed, not just cold, Arctic, impossible cold. Your breath would freeze, your tears would freeze on your face. The cold of an Edinburgh winter with no shelter, with no hope. The cold that killed hundreds of Covenanters in 1679. The dead sharing their death, making others feel it, know it, remember it. The entity. At first, people thought it was multiple ghosts, the Covenanters, all of them individual spirits attacking individually. But patterns emerged, certain behaviors and consistencies. It wasn't individuals, it becomes something else, something unified. The collective suffering of hundreds of dead merged, fused by shared trauma and rage into a single entity. A poltergeist. Not a ghost, not a haunting, a force, a manifestation of accumulated pain given power and purpose. It had intelligence, intent, strategy. It targeted certain people, the arrogant, the disrespectful, the ones who mocked or who laughed, who treated the kirkyard like entertainment. It left others alone, the reverent, the respectful, those who understood the weight of history, the cost of the suffering buried there. It was teaching, punishing, enforcing remembrance. Don't forget us, it said, through scratches and burns and terror. Don't forget what was done to us. Don't forget that we died here. Hundreds of us. For our faith. For our principles. Remember. Or we'll make you remember. The spreading. The poltergeist grew stronger, started reaching beyond the kirkyard. People who'd visited, who'd been attacked or marked, reported phenomena at home, miles away, far from Greyfriars. Objects moving, cold spots, scratches appearing on their bodies, burns, bruises. The entity had marked them, claimed them, followed them. It was no longer bound to the kirkyard, no longer limited to the physical space where the Covenanters had died. It had learned and evolved. It had discovered it could attach to people and just ride them home, extend its reach. Edinburgh started experiencing secondary hauntings. Homes, hotels, buildings, all connected by one thread. The occupant had visited Greyfriars Kirkyard, had stood near the Black Mausoleum, had entered the Covenanters' prison. The entity was spreading, like a contagion, like a plague. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Covenanters had been imprisoned to contain them, to prevent their ideas from spreading. Now their rage was spreading, uncontainable, unstoppable. Present. The Black Mausoleum stands in Greyfriars Courtyard. Gate locked, sealed again. But it doesn't matter. The entity is already free. Has been free since that seal was broken in the 1990s. The Covenanters' prison is closed to the public. Too dangerous. Too active. Too many injuries. But you could still feel it from outside the walls. The cold, the rage, the hunger. The ground is still black, still wet, still poisoned by suffering. The poltergeist is still there, still attacking, still teaching, still enforcing remembrance. Hundreds come to Greyfriars every day. Most leave unharmed, awed by history, sobered by tragedy. But some leave marked, scratched, burned, bruised, changed. Carrying the Covenanters' message, carrying their rage, carrying their demand. Remember us. Remember what was done. Remember the cost of persecution. The entity doesn't rest, doesn't weaken, doesn't fade. It's fed by visitors, by attention, and by the continued acknowledgement of the suffering that created it. And beneath Mackenzie's tomb, in the darkness of the Black Mausoleum, something else stirs. Not the Covenanters, Mackenzie himself. Awakened by centuries of accusation, of rage directed at his resting place, of being blamed, hated, attacked. His spirit has absorbed it all, twisted by it, warped by it. No longer the cold judge, something much worse now. Something that's learned hatred from those who hate him. Two forces in Greyfriars Kirkyard. The Covenanters' collective rage, Mackenzie's twisted remnant, locked in eternal conflict, eternal punishment, eternal replay of persecution and revenge. And caught between them, the living, the curious, the disrespectful, the marked. Greyfriars Kirkyard never closes. The dead never rest. The poltergeist never stops. The scratches never heal completely. The burns never fade entirely. The marks remain. Physical, psychological, spiritual. Remember us, the marks say. Remember what happened here. Remember that injustice leaves scars, that suffering doesn't end with death, that some wounds are too deep to heal, that some rage is too justified to forgive, that some dead will never, ever rest. Greyfriars remembers. The Covenanters remember. And now, if you've been marked, you'll remember too. Forever. Disclaimer. This is a fictionalized account based on Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh, Scotland, and the legend of the Mackenzie poltergeist. George Mackenzie, 1636 to 1691, was a real historical figure who served as Lord Advocate and was involved in the persecution of Covenanters. The Covenanters' prison in Greyfriars Kirkyard is real and did hold Presbyterian prisoners after the Battle of Bothwell Bridge in 1679, where many died in harsh conditions. Mackenzie's mausoleum exists in the kirkyard. The modern poltergeist activity reportedly began after someone broke into the mausoleum in the 1990s. While the historical facts of the kirkyard's reputation for paranormal activity are documented, the specific supernatural events, the formation and behavior of the poltergeist entity, and the narrative of how the haunting developed are fictional dramatizations based on legend and ghost tour narratives. Thank you, and I hope we see you again at Friday Night Frights.